Missions Pulse. Know God's heart, join his mission.
My identity, who am I? Am I made for this world? To me, what I'm learning is I am a sojourner on this space. I cannot take all of these things with me, and the only thing we can take is souls. And I think that's why I think we're going to get to in a minute the Big C Church and the bigger picture. This is causing us to benefit the world. In fact, I'm sorry to keep going here, but I want to read from Habits for Our Holiness, just a one statement that you wrote that I think is very powerful. It says, the world should benefit from our spiritual growth. That spoke to me because this should be a time, incubation time perhaps, in that crucible time perhaps, and we are growing, deepening our relationship with the Lord. The world should benefit from that deepening of our relationship with the Lord, should it not?
Yeah, absolutely. Which is, it's a big reason why I wrote that book, because I kept seeing so many of the books on spiritual formation, so many of the teachings on spiritual formation, even what I did in my early ministry in my 20s, it was all so based on how could I, as an individual, grow deeper in the Lord. And it became just so internalized and so privatized. It really was a privatized kind of Christianity, that if you can get into your prayer closet and you can pray for an hour and you can hear from God, and it was just a lot of yous. And as I began to look at the landscape of how spirituality had been taught and written about, and books that I would still recommend today that were immensely helpful, and I think continue to be immensely helpful. The one thing that I kept seeing as the missing factor was, well, then what does my spiritual growth do for everybody else in the world? And so in writing Habits for Our Holiness, my emphasis was that the spiritual disciplines, which it's a book essentially about spiritual disciplines, are for your growth. They are for the growth of the church, and they are for your engagement into the mission of God. And so even the issue of Sabbath, which I think that there is a sense at which we're not taking advantage of everybody else's crisis. And so I'm not going to claim that the coronavirus pandemic was so that God could slow my life down. That would be ego and arrogance on the highest level. But we must look at the details of what's happened, that God has caused just a sudden kind of non-movement. We all had to draw back. And so what do you do with this moment of drawing back? Are you going to just use it selfishly, that this was for me, and so now I can get a nap in the afternoon and I can kind of take it easy and kick back? Or as believers, are we going to prepare ourselves for the relaunch back into the culture when the all clear sign is given, and that we're going to be ready to engage our neighbor in a way that we never have before? Let me go on for one more moment and give an illustration. So we recently, Angie, my wife, and I relocated from Florida in the United States to Nashville, Tennessee, when I took on this new role as the publisher with Thomas Nelson Bibles. So we've been here for about 4 months. And in the time that we've been here, we, periodically get out and walk the neighborhood like lots of people do. And at first, we saw nobody out walking as well. But during these last few weeks, while schools are out, businesses are shut down, it's amazing how many neighbors are sitting on their porches reading the newspaper or a magazine, or, kids are playing in the yard, and because everybody's home. Well, the question that Angie and I have to ask ourselves is, okay, so when all of this is over, and now as we're walking down the street and those people are out in their yard that we've seen and we've waved at from the 6-foot distance, the social distance. Are we now going to take it as an opportunity to actually engage them in conversation? The people that we see walking the same time that we're walking, are we going to take it as an opportunity to pause, to stop, to say, hey, I'm Philip, this is Angie, what are your names, what's your life all about, and actually befriend people? Or will we continue to just be passerbys. And this is an opportunity for us to prepare ourselves spiritually to engage rather than just continue to have the drawbridge of an automatic garage door opener in our lives and on our houses. So I do think that this is an opportunity.
I agree. And I like the idea of poising ourselves in that posture of expectancy, because there truly is a harvest on the horizon. I mean, Jesus says there's no problem with the harvest, right? It is plentiful. It was plentiful back then. It's plentiful today. There's a problem with laborers, the lack thereof. And that intentionality, perhaps, we need to be poised in that position or posture of expectancy. There are great things. And it's almost like you're talking about a time, a day and age, perhaps even when before I was born, or the years that I was born, right? Where people hung out on their porch and talked and they didn't have iPhones. I'm going to look even from a different perspective, only because I'm here in Thailand, where I'm shooting this right now. Missions, you can call it, perhaps many who are watching and listening, missional or missional living, the mission of God. Missions, cross-cultural global missions, was kind of already on the lower side of priorities on many different churches. Is this, or do we have potential of sweeping even lower, that friend to friend, horizontal expression of the gospel to others, those around us? Are we becoming more myopic? Is it becoming, like you said a while ago, more about me, myself, how I benefit, how, you know what I'm saying?
No, I do. I think I do understand what you're saying. And it's going to be the constant tug and pull, depending on the culture in which the church is positioned, and certainly within Western culture here in the United States, where we live by, these creeds that are unspoken of rugged individualism. And, you gotta get all that you can for yourself and not worry about your neighbor. You have to climb the corporate ladder. And it's all about getting to the magic age of 62, 65, of when I can retire and I don't have to do anything for anybody else. Yeah. And that has crept insidiously into the life of the church and the Western culture, that it is a rugged individualism where we do things on our own and we do things for ourselves. And as the word you use, myopic, I think is very much the case. It's just this kind of tunnel vision that again, even spirituality is celebrated when it's the individual achievement, rather than not how much did you grow, but how much did you help other people grow?
Yes.
How many disciples did you make? Did you bring with you? And we have. We have celebrated for a long time, long before our time, for centuries, the largesse of church congregations and ministries by how many attenders they had, rather than by how many missionaries they sent. It's and so I want to take this as an opportunity to challenge even church leadership thinking that. Is the metric of how many people attend a worship service important? Yes, it is important. But alongside of that is the measurement and the goal of, well, how many people are you getting rid of? How many other churches are you planting? How many missionaries are you sending out? Not how many people in your Bible study group, if you're a group leader, but how many Bible study groups have you launched? How many other leaders have you produced? And this should be the cyclical measurement, as Paul talked to Timothy in 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 2. He said, what you've heard from me in the presence of many witnesses, take this and entrust to other men who can also teach.
Yes,
and so
that multiplication aspect.
Yeah, this reproduction and this replication mindset that I think is possible for us to reinvigorate in a time like this. Again, be poised for the mission that and launch out on, that it is not about you, it's about your neighbor, it's about God's sending nature.
Missions Pulse. Know God's heart, join his mission. This podcast is powered by Within Reach Global. Subscribe, watch, and listen on YouTube today. Visit missionspulse.com.